Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
It's been called the most confounding missing children's case in Canadian history. On March 24th, 1991, 4-year-old Michael Dennehy was with his family at a local elementary school in Victoria, British Columbia, where his mother was playing in a flag football tournament. He asked his mom if he could go play on the playground, which is right by the football field. Michael's mother said yes, but that he had to stay right there until his father arrived. But when Michael's father went to collect the little boy a few minutes later, he was gone. Over the next 3 decades, many theories would be bandied about, running the gamut from an abduction by a family who wanted to raise a child to a satanic ritual. But to this day, Michael remains missing. When a person goes missing, there's a special kind of pain in the not knowing. I want to tell you the stories of those who never came home. Today, I want to tell you the story of Michael Dennehy. I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
And this is And Then They Were Gone. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back.
Thanks for joining us once again. I'm Kona.
And I'm Ethan.
And we are the husband and wife team behind this podcast. Each week, I tell you the story of an unsolved missing persons case, and Ethan doesn't know anything about the case going into the episode. He is here to provide reactions and questions in real time, hopefully asking some of the same ones that you have at home. So after last week's episode fiasco where I cried, I don't know.
Pretty much nonstop.
Yeah. I edited a lot of that out. I don't know why I'm going to torture myself by doing an episode on a missing 4-year-old child, but here we are. We have a ton of Canadian listeners, which you may or may not know.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Hi, Canada.
Hi, Canada. We have somehow never done an episode that takes place in Canada, though.
Really?
Yeah, I know. So I wanted to make sure that we got at least one in by the end of the year. Now, this case has so many possibilities that it absolutely makes sense that it hasn't been solved in 30 years. But that isn't to say that it never will be. And I think that's really important to talk about when we tell the stories of long-term unsolved missing people. There's absolutely a chance that Michael will be found one way or another. One of the cold case detectives that has been in charge of Michael's case is Detective Sergeant Michelle Robertson. And she said something very interesting and very true about cold cases, that in order for them to be solved, there generally needs to be, quote, a change in technology or a change in relationships, end quote. And I really like that. And, you know, for this, since there's no technology involved, a change in relationships really could be the key here. But before we get started, I would like to thank Sean H., who has joined us over on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support, Sean. And as a reminder, you can get episodes early and ad-free by subscribing to our Patreon at any level. And you can also listen to these episodes ad-free by subscribing on Apple Podcasts. But now, with all that out of the way, let's get into the case of Michael Dennehy. Michael Wayne Dennehy was born on May 12, 1996 in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, to Crystal and Bruce Dennehy. Michael was the couple's first child. They added a baby girl, Caitlin, to the mix in late 1990, shortly after Michael's 4th birthday. The Dennehys were living a typical suburban life in 1991. Bruce was a roofer, and Crystal worked in an insurance office. After giving birth to Caitlin, Crystal wanted to get back out there and get active again, so she ended up joining a flag football team.
Is that something that's common in Canada?
I don't know. I don't know.
Like an adult flag football league?
Yeah, I don't know of any around here, but apparently, because there were like multiple teams playing on the day that this happened. It was a whole tournament. I mean, you played Ultimate Frisbee in an adult league. So I feel like if people are willing to do that, flag football isn't a stretch.
Yeah, I guess.
Sunday, March 24th, 1991 was a chilly, windy day in Victoria. The family of four headed out to nearby Blanchard Park Elementary School at around 12:30 for Crystal's flag football tournament. Crystal was going to play as Bruce and the children watched. Because it was an elementary school, there was a playground right next to the field, a fact that Michael immediately clocked.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it was, good for the parents too, for the dad.
Yeah, exactly. Like any 4-year-old, he immediately asked to go play at the playground. Now, they were still trying to get everything set up, because they had the baby with them. She had stuff to do to get ready. They're juggling just a bunch of things. So Crystal didn't like the idea of her 4-year-old going off by himself, but, they were doing all these other things, and the playground was right next to where they were.
Mm-hmm.
So despite her misgivings, Crystal tied the hood tight on Michael's jacket and told him that he could go over and play for just a little while until Daddy came to get him. Exactly what happened next is a little murky. In the earliest newspaper articles, there's an account of Michael playing hide and seek with other children. According to this story, he was the one hiding. The children said they were going to count to 10, but apparently only counted to 5 before coming to get him, but they were unable to find the little boy.
After 5 seconds?
Yes.
Okay.
I do hesitate to present that as 100% fact. One, because
they're kids.
They're kids, right? Also, a lot of the early articles had factual errors, which we see a lot when we're looking at newspaper articles that come out right afterwards, because it's basically they're just trying to get the story out. And so a lot of the details get mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, in an article in the Vancouver Sun dated March 25th, the day after Michael goes missing, it states that Michael was there to watch his father play in a tournament and that his mother wasn't even present.
That's a little different.
Right, exactly. It also says that Bruce was alerted by family friends that Michael was missing. And then in other accounts, I've heard that he went over to get Michael, and then that's when he saw that Michael was missing. So I don't exactly 100% know how that all went down. The information about hide and seek, however, I have seen kind of repeated over the years. So I think the general idea of that is correct. It originally comes from a March 26th article in The Province, and quotes Victoria Police Corporal Dan Mercer, who told reporters, quote, "They only counted to 5 and then they went around and he wasn't there. That's how long it took," end quote.
Went around what?
I think went around, maybe the other side of the playground, the side of the building, just something where he could be hiding.
Okay.
What I'm not clear on is exactly how Bruce and Crystal realized their son was missing. Like I said, the common retelling is that Bruce did go over to get him so they could watch the game, at which point he couldn't find Michael. But in any case, whether that was it or it was the kids who came over or something, as soon as he realized his son was missing, he alerted the other adults there, and the games were immediately halted. While players and their families, basically everyone who was in attendance, about 50 people in all, began searching for the missing 4-year-old. The police were also called immediately, and they responded quickly. Michael was only 4, and he went missing from a public location, so police immediately took it seriously.
That's good.
Police got there and began their search, and the investigation would become the largest in Victoria's history. Detective Inspector Fred Mills spoke to the CBC in 2016 on the 25th anniversary of Michael's disappearance. He said, quote, "I received the phone call at home on a Sunday that a child had gone missing from the playground. It became quite clear that this was more than just a missing child, that in fact it had all the earmarks of an abduction," end quote.
So that's it as far as the timeline goes of him going missing, or do we get more information later?
Not a lot of specific information, just about the search, basically. I mean, so they arrived at the field at around 12:30, and he's reported missing at about 1 o'clock.
Wow, that's fast.
Yeah, so it all did happen very quickly, and then it was just full court press. And then the search continued very intensely throughout the rest of the day and into the night. But it unfortunately turned up nothing. By the next day, Monday, Victoria police brought in helicopters with heat-seeking equipment to aid in the search. Police did very quickly start looking at this as an abduction, but they were holding out hope that, he had wandered off, right?
Yeah.
And that he was in a shed somewhere or hiding or, just something like on somebody else's property nearby.
Yeah.
But to their credit, they treated it as an abduction, like, great. If we find him in a shed, perfect. Love it. But they went forward treating it as an abduction. Over 200 people, including police, civilians, and the Coast Guard, were looking for Michael by this point. There were so many volunteers that some had to wait an hour or two to even receive an assignment.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I'm surprised. I was like ready for you to ask me why the Coast Guard was involved.
I mean, look, I don't know the geography of Canada, but is British Columbia the island?
The elementary school no longer exists, but it was located at 950 Kings Road. This is approximately 1 kilometer from Rock Bay, which eventually feeds into the Pacific Ocean.
Got it.
Yeah, so they were not on the water. So it's not as
pretty close.
But pretty close enough that a kid could have walked that far, or somebody could have obviously taken him there.
Right.
But they weren't close enough that he would have just stumbled in accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
Police distributed missing flyers to all of the ferry captains in the area, as well as cab and bus drivers. Door-to-door searches were performed. Police, like I said, were treating it as a stranger abduction. And it wouldn't be long before they started wondering if it was connected to some other incidents in the area. In a March 26th article in The Province, there's an interesting section. It reads, quote, "Police say it's the first time they can remember that a young child in Victoria has apparently been abducted by strangers. But last fall, there was a rash of apparent abduction attempts and indecent exposure cases, some in the same neighborhood." End quote.
So perpetrators ramping up his efforts.
Perhaps, but it's not necessarily one person who's doing all of this either.
Right.
In the nearby town of Esquimalt, there were 10 reported attempted abduction cases the previous fall. The victims were both male and female and ranged in age from 6 to 12. Most were approached as they walked home alone from school. Police were unsure if those attempts were related to Michael's case, which by then, just 2 days after Michael's disappearance, they were officially calling a stranger abduction. Now, 10 attempted abductions seems like a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know what the average stats are, but 10 in one small town over a fall, so one season, seems like an excessive amount.
It's got to be the same person.
I don't know.
This is not like a big metropolitan area, right?
No. Well, okay, it is. So, this is Vancouver, Vancouver Island. It is around, yes, it's around a big metropolitan area, but that town itself is not.
Right, that's what I mean.
So, yeah.
The town is not
Yes, but it's not in the middle of nowhere.
Sure.
Either.
Yeah, but.
No, it seems insane.
Right.
So I don't know. And as I'm reading these articles, that are bringing up all these other things that have been happening kind of nearby, there are a few bizarre anecdotes that got shared that were kind of just stuck in these articles with no further comment. And I have so many questions about them. All right. So I have no idea if this anecdote, that I'm about to tell you has anything to do with Michael's disappearance, but I did find it interesting. Now, in this article, local parents were being interviewed basically about how they didn't want their children to go outside and play since this happened. Your typical, we have such a lovely town, now we're all locking our doors, the town lost its innocence, that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
One mom, a woman named Rose Carr, was still holding out hope that Michael wasn't abducted. She told reporters, quote, "Everyone looks out for each other's children. I believe Michael is stuck somewhere and just can't get out," end quote. So this is, a couple days later.
Whoa, wait a second. hold the phone. Like, this woman just says that.
That's not even the part that I thought was crazy.
It gets worse because that is very specific.
Well, no, but I think her idea is, again, that he's like in a shed on somebody's property and he got stuck in there.
Okay. It's not the way I took it, but okay.
Okay, but get this. So she then goes on to say that the previous summer, her 7-year-old went missing. He was gone for 8 hours before eventually being found crying in front of a downtown hotel.
What?
That was my question. No follow-up questions from the reporter. They're just like, oh, yeah, I guess shit happens. Like, I don't know. So like, maybe my imagination is running away with me, but that seems incredibly weird.
Yeah.
And I don't know which hotel he was found in front of because, again, reporter asked 0 follow-up questions. But I Google mapped the route from the school to downtown, and it's about 1.5 kilometers. Maybe it's nothing, and maybe this little boy just went on a walkabout and then got scared at the end. But it struck me as insanely creepy in this context.
Yeah.
And again, it's just never brought up again or remarked upon. Meanwhile, tips are pouring in while police try to stay on top of them. Like they just had, it was one of those things. They're canceling leave. Good Friday, the Good Friday weekend was coming up. Everybody was working through that. Like it was just nuts. Several people reported seeing a man lurking across from the school around the time Michael and his family were there. On March 30th, police released a sketch of the man who was described as a Caucasian male in his late 30s or early 40s with short grayish hair that is receding and combed to one side. He was described as having a large nose and prominent ears. He was wearing gray rugby pants and a blue jacket with white stripes across the front. Police believed the man was 5'4" to 5'7" and had a chubby build. Though in later articles, it said that he had a muscular build.
I have questions.
Yeah.
What are rugby pants?
I don't know, but they talk about them a lot in this case. I think it's a Canadian thing. I don't know if it's literally pants that you wear to play rugby.
Wouldn't those just be like athletic shorts or athletic
pants? I
pants?
have no idea, but I heard rugby pants, I saw rugby pants being talked about like pretty often. A young girl also reported seeing a brown van in the area. The van was described as being a large American model with no side windows and a sliding cargo door. The door on the passenger side had white scrape marks and the rear windows were darkened. So creepy as hell. There were also curtains on the front windows and a tan-colored bulldog was seen in a cage in the van, which I don't know how you would see that if everything's curtained up and blacked out. Yeah. So I don't know if the door was open at one point and they saw this dog in a cage.
What is an American model of van?
Yeah, I don't know what would make that different. I guess like a Ford or whatever, like a Ford Econoline. I think that's just what they mean. Like it's a Ford or a Chevy.
It's just a weird way to describe it.
Yeah, well. Interestingly, on September 26, 1989, so just under 2 years prior, there was an alleged attempted abduction of a 3-year-old boy near the intersection of Kings Road and Dowler Place in Victoria. In this attempt, a man in a brown van was allegedly observed trying to lure a child into the vehicle using McDonald's toys.
That would make sense if it's the same person. It's similar MOs, age, gender of the child. Obviously the van matches the description, and I'm assuming it's somewhere nearby the school.
Yeah, it's in the same general area.
Yeah. School, playground.
Exactly.
Obvious places to scout out if that's your MO.
Right. And it's very similar to the Morgan Nick case, who is the one who was kidnapped from a Little League game in Arkansas, because prior to her abduction, there were a couple attempted abductions of young girls right by her.
Yeah.
So, that's what happens, right? Like they have to try a couple times before it actually works out.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, not always, but
No, not always.
But,
no,
you
but
know.
clearly sometimes. Now, the first attempt didn't work because a woman named Bev Morrison saw what was happening and intervened, leading to a verbal altercation between her and the driver of the van. She called police, but, you know, it's 1989. She didn't have a cell phone.
right.
So by the time she got to a phone and called the police and they got there, the dude was long gone. But
Description?
Miss Bev, she did better than that. She got the license plate number.
Nice.
Yeah. So they eventually, I don't know how long, later, whatever, but they eventually identified the guy, but he was never charged with the attempted abduction of this little 3-year-old.
Mm.
So to this day, we have no idea if he has anything to do with Michael's disappearance or not. He apparently remained on Vancouver Island for years until his death in 2022.
So you would think that the RCMP would have probably interviewed him?
Yeah, so it was Victoria Police who was the primary agency, but yes,
My
they did
bad.
call in the RCMP, to assist. But yeah, you would have to assume nothing that I could find spoke directly about that,
Mm-hmm.
but the brown van does come up more. So it would be insane if they didn't, but
Right.
So after Michael's disappearance, several tips came in from people who reported seeing similar vans because, once they got the original brown van tip from the little girl who was there that day, police started circulating that everywhere. So one of the people who reported seeing a similar van came from a mother named Julie Benton. Julie went down to the police station on the Wednesday after Michael's abduction and told them that she saw an old VW van parked in an alley near the elementary school where Michael was last seen.
That's not an American model.
It's not. That's German.
Yep.
What's more, she said she saw a little blonde-haired boy in the van.
Oh, God.
She described the vehicle as having British Columbia plates and being dented. And this is the next part that's crazy. Then she said that she recognized the woman who was driving the van as the same woman who had tried to abduct her child 7 years previously.
Yo, what the hell is going on in Vancouver?
I have no clue. So she said, quote, "I almost drove off the road when I saw her," end quote.
Is this just a safe haven for child abductors?
I have no idea.
Or what are the police dropping the ball because they can't? Maybe it's more difficult to charge and prove attempted abductions.
I have
but
no idea.
it seems wild that there are this many attempted abductions or children going missing
Yeah.
and then popping up or whatever.
Between the kid who went missing and was found crying in front of the downtown hotel and this woman who's like, "Oh, yeah, I saw that brown van." And there's the lady who tried to kidnap my kids 7 years ago.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, I have no idea. I was just reading through these newspaper articles that are 30 years old. I'm like, this is absolutely wild. As the investigation reached the 1 week mark, a reward fund for information grew to $40,000 from both individual and corporate donations. Police continued to circulate the sketch of the man, the poor, short, balding, big-nosed man, and also gathered snapshots that people had taken at the school that day with the goal of identifying all of the people in the cars in the photos.
Oh, that's smart.
Mm-hmm. In doing this, police identified another little boy who had been playing in a small park across the street at the time. And this little boy looked uncannily similar to Michael, down to the jacket that they were both wearing. They were wearing almost identical jackets. And it was determined that several of the witness accounts that they had gotten were actually about this little boy
Oh.
and not Michael.
Oh, wow.
Investigators said that this new information was leading them to place less emphasis on the brown van And they completely ruled out that whole line of inquiry by April 4th. By April 4th, they announced they were no longer looking for a brown van.
That's interesting.
I thought so too. I mean, between the lady who talked about the VW van and then the 3-year-old who had been abducted 18 months or attempted abduction 18 months prior with a brown van, like, that's crazy to me that they felt that they could rule that out. Just 4 days after Michael's abduction, another attempted abduction was reported in Vancouver, about 114 kilometers away. In this case, a 9-year-old girl was walking home from piano lessons around 5 p.m. when she saw a yellow Ford van at an intersection. She said that she heard the sliding door slam open and that a man came out and started running after her.
Jesus.
Yeah. He chased her for about 20 meters until she reached her backyard. The man was described as a white man between 40 and 50 years old with long black hair and a ponytail. He was wearing a red bandana, white t-shirt, blue jeans, and brown cowboy boots.
So Bruce Springsteen?
I think so, except with long hair.
That's weird.
Yeah. As the second week in the investigation came to a close, Victoria police received some help from the States. The FBI worked on a possible profile of the abductor, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children also agreed to send out Michael's photo and information on 55 million cards that would be placed on bus stops, distributed in convenience stores, and placed on milk cartons. America's Most Wanted also devoted a segment to Michael, a move that garnered about 150 additional tips, including a possible sighting by an ex-detective in New Jersey.
New Jersey?
Yeah, and so keep in mind, this section of Canada, like the Vancouver, British Columbia, that's on the other side. Like, we're talking West Coast over here. So we're talking all the way on the other side of the continent.
Okay.
Shortly thereafter, police located a man who fit the description of the balding man that they were looking for. They interviewed him, but the man denied being at the school on March 24th.
Okay. I mean...
Police didn't release any more information other than to say that they had no reason to make an arrest at that time.
Well, sure. Don't make an arrest yet, but like... Nope, wasn't there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, I know so the article I read said that they were planning on interviewing him a second time, but I mean, obviously nothing came of it. So whether or not he wasn't there, he was there, like that lead kind of died off after that. Local police in New Jersey began to assist in the search for Michael because of that tip, initial tip, and soon a second tip came in. A man said that he was in a convenience store in Maple Shade, New Jersey, which is a suburb of Philadelphia, and a little boy came up to him and said, quote, "I'm from Vancouver and I'm looking for my mommy and daddy," end quote. According to this witness, later identified as Harold Crush, a 48-year-old recycling contractor, this encounter took place on April 4th around 3 p.m. The man said that the boy introduced himself, but he didn't hear his name because the man was talking to somebody else at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The boy, dressed in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles t-shirt similar to the one Michael was wearing when he disappeared, was then whisked from the store by a black man. He said that there was also a little girl with them, who he says called the boy Michael. So according to him, like the little girl came up first and was like, "Oh, hey, Michael, there you are. It's time to go." And then like the man came and got them both out of the store. The trio left in a maroon car, possibly a 1998 or 99 Oldsmobile or Cadillac. The America's Most Wanted segment aired the following day on April 5th, and the man watched it and then called in his tip. He then worked with local police to develop a composite sketch of the man and the girl, but to my knowledge, that hasn't been published anywhere. Like I couldn't find it in anything that I was researching. Despite initial excitement over this tip and 2 more segments devoted to Michael on America's Most Wanted, police were seemingly no closer to finding the little boy. Around the 1-month mark, 2 detectives flew down to FBI headquarters to work with 6 top behavioral analysts to try to come up with a more complete profile of Michael's abductor. Investigators also asked everyone who was at the school on March 24th to return so that they could basically put together a reenactment. They wanted to know, like, where everybody was parked, where everybody was on the field, who was playing, who was watching. Like,
I mean, yeah, it's worth a shot. I mean,
yeah,
maybe that jogs somebody's memory.
Yeah, exactly. And leading up to this, so this is about a month in, and leading up to this, there had been a couple of community meetings. So, I mentioned getting the photos that people had taken that day.
Yeah.
And trying to identify everybody in them. Like, they did that at one of these community meetings. So they had another one where they're just basically talking to everybody and saying, kind of brainstorming and being like, okay, like, now let's try this, let's try that. And that led to this reenactment at the 1-month mark. But despite all of these efforts, Michael remained missing. No matter how much time passed, Michael's parents never gave up on finding him and never wavered in their belief that he was alive. They began to work and continue to work on keeping his name and his story in the forefront of people's minds. They started the Michael Dennehy Keep the Hope Alive fun run and walk. They just held the 32nd one on March 26, 2023. 6 years after Michael's disappearance, the Dennehy family moved into a home nearby. They made sure it had enough space so Michael could still have his own room. The bedroom is filled with Michael's toys and belongings, including a hat with his name embroidered on it, and a photo of him with his grandfather. Unopened Christmas and birthday presents were stacked in a corner. The new home with the unused bedroom represents the Dennehys as a whole in the years following Michael's abduction, a family that continued to grow and change while still keeping the little boy who they didn't have the chance to see grow up front and center. Crystal ended up leaving her insurance job and opened a family restaurant. Bruce switched careers from being a roofer to becoming a shipyard laborer. They kept their landline phone, as they had taught Michael his phone number shortly before his disappearance. 2 years, and this is just another really interesting thing that happened. 2 years after Michael's disappearance, Crystal's search did lead to a significant discovery. Her birth mother.
What?
Crystal.
She was adopted?
Yes, Crystal was adopted. And a private investigator she hired to find her son found her birth mother living in California.
What the hell?
Yeah, and the two connected, much to the delight of Mavis Jenks, who had never given up hope of finding the daughter she had given up for adoption nearly 4 decades previously.
That's wild.
Yeah. Shortly after she reconnected with Crystal over the phone, Mavis was shopping and saw one of Michael's missing posters in the shopping center near her home in California. Though she never had the chance to meet her grandson, she started to keep a copy of his missing poster taped to her car window. As the years went on, the case began to take interesting turns. In 2011, Milwaukee, Wisconsin police searched the home of a dead man named Vernon Seitz. Seitz was a self-proclaimed psychic who often contacted families of abducted children in the United States. During the search, police found one of Michael's missing posters. This got back to the Dennehys, who said they weren't sure if he had ever contacted them regarding Michael, but that the name did sound familiar.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that, they weren't keeping track of
everybody who reached out, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure he wasn't the only psychic to
yeah.
reach out to them. And this is 10 years after Michael's abduction at this point. Okay, so if they're not sure if they've ever interacted with this guy or whatever, why are we talking about him?
And he's dead.
And he's dead. Well, before he died, Seitz apparently made a deathbed confession to his psychiatrist in which he asked the doctor to tell police that he killed a child in 1959 and knew of another child killing.
Knew of another child killing?
Right.
That he did? Or...
I don't know.
Okay.
Apparently there wasn't much more information, but that led to the search of his house after his death. During the search, investigators also found drawings of nude boys in bondage, a videotape reportedly showing the kidnapping of a 4-year-old boy. No more information there. And books on cannibalism.
Jesus.
Yeah. Now, as horrifying as all of this is, no connection has been found between Seitz and Michael. But what a wild thing for the parents to have to deal with 10 years into this.
Yeah.
Like, oh, by the way, this guy in Milwaukee, like, says he knows of a random child killing that happened at some point between 1959 and now, and has all of this horrible stuff in his basement and maybe reached out to you at some point.
Yeah.
Like, just awful. Now, as can be expected in a case like this, young men also began to come forward claiming to be Michael.
Right. I was wondering when that was going to start.
Yeah. Well, the first one was in 2011, near the 20th anniversary of Michael's abduction. The community of Chase, British Columbia, believed that a young man who lived there looked like a grown-up version of Michael. The belief went so far, and I don't know all the details, but like it was deemed credible enough that the man took a DNA test, which of course proved that he was not Michael.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, you go missing at 4. It's fair to say that you wouldn't necessarily remember.
Oh, for sure.
Your previous life, quote unquote.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's completely within the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
In a slightly weirder case, in 2012, police released a composite of what Michael may look like as a 26-year-old man. In 2013, a man who lived in Surrey, British Columbia, uploaded a recent photo of himself in a discussion forum so that other people could agree with him or disagree that he resembled the composite. So basically this composite comes out, then this guy's on the, in a forum online, and he's like, yeah, here's a picture of me. Like, is it, am I crazy or does this look like me? And a bunch of people are like, yeah, no, that totally does look like you. So fine. Like that seems like a very normal, reasonable thing to happen in a situation like this. But the weird part is that this discussion wasn't on like a subreddit, devoted to unsolved cases or on web sleuths or something like that. It was in a Vancouver Canucks forum. Now, for those of you who do not know, the Canucks are Vancouver's hockey team.
Yeah, like what? How did that get on there?
I have no idea. I don't spend a lot of time in hockey forums, but apparently it's just a crazy place. So I don't know why he went there, but eventually the tip ended up, in the hands of investigators, and this man also ended up taking a DNA test, but of course was not Michael. Though these two men weren't Michael, these tips at least seemingly came from like a place of good faith, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the second man, the Canucks guy, he talked about how like his family moved around a ton when he was little. He didn't remember a lot of his childhood. Like his dad, I think, left, his mom died, just he had reasons to think that this could possibly be true. Right.
Yeah.
But of course, as we know in these cases, that's not always what happens.
No, it just re-traumatizes the parents.
Right. And sometimes you have people who come without good intentions.
Yeah.
Just a few months ago, in fact, in October 2023, the Dunahys warned the public not to engage with a man who was claiming to be Michael and asking for money. In a social media post, the family stated, quote, "Some of you may have noticed some posts or been contacted directly by a fellow recently claiming to be Michael. We can confirm he is not. Please do not engage in conversations with him, and most importantly, please do not send him the money as he was requesting." End quote. which it's still, as many times as we tell stories in which people try to scam the family members of a missing person, like, it's still mind-boggling to me that anybody can be that cruel. And to be fair, though, this guy, it sounds like he has issues with mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily coming from a place of cruelty. But either way, the effect on the family, I can't imagine how horrible that must feel.
Right.
Crystal and Bruce, as well as the rest of Michael's family, you know, like the grandparents, people like that, were cleared by investigators within days. But that hasn't stopped online sleuths from levying accusations. So, yes, people have accused the parents of being involved. One local blogged that she was pretty sure she had seen Michael on a cooking show.
What?
I don't know. These are like all the theories. Another told the National Post that he was sacrificed to the devil.
Okay.
This area was in the grips of a satanic panic around the time of Michael's disappearance. So that got a
You know
good
what,
amount of
though?
play at first.
Given the amount of child abductions and attempted child abductions, I don't blame them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mean, for the record, the satanic panic is, you know, not based in fact, but it does seem like an inordinate amount of attempted child abductions.
I mean, all of that stuff going on, I could see the jump from this is out of the ordinary to Satan worshipers have moved in
Sure.
and they're taking our kids to sacrifice them.
Yeah, you know, honestly, when you put it that way, it doesn't seem as crazy.
Right?
The two prevailing theories, though, that have kind of stuck around over the years are that he was either kidnapped and murdered by a local sex offender, or that he was kidnapped and raised by a woman who couldn't have children of her own.
Both plausible.
And honestly, there's no real evidence in this case at all, but the little bit of evidence that we do have points to both, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, if we go back to the brown van, which again, police have discounted, but if you go back to the brown van, you've got the man in the van who had been trying to abduct, you know, the 3-year-old. And so that's probably in the first group.
Yep.
But then you've got the woman in the VW van who tried to abduct a child 7 years prior. So maybe she was just trying to get a child of her own to raise.
You also have the potential witnesses in New Jersey where
Right.
a person was with multiple kids
Yeah.
as a family.
Yeah, exactly. So you absolutely can't rule either of those theories out.
Not
I mean,
at
I
all.
think that with, again, the lack of evidence that we have,
Right.
they're almost equally plausible.
Yeah, but it is important to note that they are theories and they're not based on anything because there is no evidence.
Right, right. But the Dunahees, who have lived with us every single day for over 30 years, have made it clear which scenario they believe. Perhaps it is this belief that has led the Dunahees to remain married, a rare accomplishment among the parents of long-term missing children. Michael's baby sister, Caitlin, is all grown up now. She's in her 30s and has a husband and children of her own. In 2021, Victoria Police launched an online portal for tips in Michael's case. Since then, they say they've received hundreds of tips. Crystal has submitted her DNA to national databases, quote, in case Michael decides to check out his family history, end quote. In 2016, on the 25th anniversary of her son's abduction, Crystal talked about this possibility, saying, quote, if Michael's out there, he's now an adult. If he's got questions, he sees picture and maybe realizes that's me. The case is not closed. We haven't given up. We're going to keep going until we have the answers that we need. Author Valerie Green wrote a book about the case called Vanished, the Michael Dunahee story, and she shares Bruce and Crystal's belief that Michael could still be alive. In her book, she writes Michael a letter. It says, quote, perhaps you might recall an old favorite toy, a cereal, a crying baby who was your sister Caitlin, going with your dad to Fleming Beach to watch the fishing boats coming in, and listening to your real mother telling you a bedtime story. Only your abductor or abductors know the truth about your disappearance that day, and they have kept that appalling secret for 25 years. And it is now time to break the silence. An answer is well overdue. We need to know what happened on that morning in March of 1991. Michael Dennehy has been missing from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada since March 24th, 1991. He is a white male with blonde hair and blue eyes. He was approximately 3 feet tall and 51 pounds at the time of his disappearance. He was last seen wearing multicolored rugby pants, white Ninja Turtles t-shirt, blue cloth hooded jacket with a red zipper and cuffs, blue canvas shoes with red and orange trim. Michael was 4 years old when he went missing. He would be 37 today. Anyone with information on the disappearance of Michael Dennehy is urged to call Detective Don Bland with the Victoria Police at 250-995-7654. You can also submit a tip at michaeldennehy.ca. You can see all the sources for this episode along with photos and videos at our website, andthentheyweregone.com.
And be sure to follow us on social, and Then They Were Gone Pod on Facebook and at ATTWG Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe and consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It will help new listeners find us. And the more people that listen, the more chances we have of bringing someone home.
And we'll see you here next week for a brand new episode.
See you next week.
And Then They Were Gone is hosted by Kona Gallagher and Ethan Flick. All research, writing, and editing is done by me, Kona Gallagher. Theme music is The Stork by Ketsa. Additional music is provided by Kai Engel. And Then They Were Gone is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!